If you were born between 1969 and 1984, you are a part of the 65 million Gen Xers. And you've just found your new family. Welcome to the Carolina Underground. Gen X perspectives on rapidly changing technology, history, media, politics, how they come together and influence every aspect of daily life. The world we were raised in has ceased to exist, but we haven't. Let's do it. Welcome to the Carolina Underground. Now your hosts, Mark and Mike.
Yo, 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 we're sitting up here under the mistletoe, watching people take the Christmas tree decorations down here on the Carolina Underground in the replica back cave, getting ready for a brand new year of pissing people off.
Okay. It's good to have a goal, I reckon.
If you can't tell, I've had about 7 cups of coffee already today, and I'm ready to rock and roll.
Well, good on you, man. How have you been?
I've been pretty good. I've just been sitting at home drinking hot drinks and being all fat and sassy.
Well, all right. Well, we have not had a chance to speak since I came back from going down and doing our first on location, and with the Costa Rican stones, and
right.
I've got plenty of pictures. I know we probably need to get together and look at the pictures and talk about it. I got to say, and I'm happy to go into it and talk all about it and tell you, I got to say that it was my interpretation of it and what I saw firsthand is a little bit different than what you get on
Well, first off, why don't you explain what it is? Because until you had mentioned this upcoming into your trip into Costa Rica, I had never heard of them.
Well, okay, so the Costa Rican stones are these, some folks will refer to them as perfectly rounded. I mean, they're big rocks. They're boulders, okay? Some of them are.
I'm going to pause you real quick. For our loyal listener, Costa Rica, that's a whole nother country.
Yeah, it is. It's situated between Nicaragua and Panama. But
how far is that from the Panama Canal? That's north of the Panama Canal.
It is north of it's north of Panama, which is where the Panama Canal is.
Well, yeah.
I don't
that middle section there is a little hazy. I just consider that illegal aliens coming into the United States.
Well, actually, that's not the case, and they actually have a huge problem there with illegal aliens coming into Costa Rica. And that's why they've got a lot of every house has bars on the windows, and their entire yard is gated.
Oh, wow.
And fenced
in.
Well,
I used to work for a company that had offices in the main city in the capital city of Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. And I had gone down there a time or two, and it's beautiful country. Amazing coffee. Absolutely. I love their coffee. I dumped out clothes just to bring coffee back in my suitcase.
Oh yeah, I brought back about 6 pounds of coffee.
Oh yeah,
it's that anybody that thinks Colombian coffee is the epitome of coffee has not ever had Costa Rican coffee.
Well, them people that drink Colombian coffee are the same ones that picks them coffee beans out of that cat shit and grinds it up and drinks that stuff too.
Yeah, the one. Yeah, it's actually a weasel poop. But yeah, but no, I mean, again, and it's and for those of you that wonder what Costa Rica looks like, if you saw any of the Jurassic Park movies, they were filmed in Costa Rica.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and well, they actually talk about that when the second movie they talk about they owned 2 islands off the coast of Costa Rica.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, because one of them's Isle Nebula and something else.
Isla Nublar and Isla Sorna. So one of them,
And that
Site B
after
and
the
Site
first
A.
two or three of them, that's something that I never really did care for, is them Jurassic Park movies. I think it's like beating a dead horse. You just keep it's just like King Kong and Godzilla. They're dead.
Oh
Give
yeah,
it a break.
oh yeah. Well, no, I agree, but I mean, again, the original one, the big problem was they spent too much time not focusing on the dinosaurs, and
Well,
then on the second and the third one,
the
that was
problem
what they wanted to
is
do.
they didn't follow the book. If they would have followed the book, it would have
Hmm.
been a lot better.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, again, that's one of those things where if the movie comes first, then the book is always a pale reflection of what the original movie was. But if
Right.
the book comes first, the movie is always a pale reflection of because it's somebody's interpretation
Right.
of
Well,
what.
and too, though, that's one of the reasons why now, if I buy a book and I'm going to read it, I also buy, excuse me, I don't only buy like either the Kindle or the hardback or the paperback. I also,
Mhm.
whatever title I buy, I also buy on Audible,
Mhm.
because even though it's the same words, the person that's reading it, the way they have their intonations and stuff, I end up picking up details that I probably ordinarily would not have picked up on if I was reading it myself, if that makes sense.
Oh, no, it makes absolute sense. But again, that is someone else's interpretation of the work, and your interpretation may be entirely different.
Correct.
Speaking of which, it is now one of my prized possessions in my library. I picked up a version of Don Quixote de la Mancha in the original Spanish.
Oh, wow.
So,
Don't
yeah,
fight
I picked up
windmills,
the
baby.
hardback. I pick that. That is the story of my life. One windmill after another. I can't resist them. And
Don Quixote was one of the books in school that I had a love-hate relationship with.
why, pray tell, is that?
Well, that was at the age to where the book was like 6 gazillion pages long, and
Oh
it
yeah.
didn't ever feel like I was going to get done with it. And
Mhm.
then the test, that when we took the test, there was no point in reading the book because the test was based on questions from the movie Don Quixote, Man of La Mancha.
Well, now that is intriguing. Uh,
Because we all had to learn the song Dulcinea.
oh yeah. I have dreamed thee too long, never seen thee nor touched thee, but known thee with all of my heart.
Yep.
Yep. But it's a beautiful song. It truly
Well,
is.
I mean, the book, and I have read it since then, not in Spanish,
Mhm.
but in English. And
Mhm.
the book is fantabulous. God, I
Oh
can't
yeah.
even talk. It's
Oh yeah.
fabulous. But
Mhm.
it's just that first, and it's kind of like, well, this was also the same class to where we had to learn the introduction to the Canterbury Tales in Old English.
Oh yes. One that a prowl hath shured sootha.
Because the root
Oh,
of March have perished to the root and bothered every vein and swish like core, of which virtue engendered that's that floor. Once a fitter sake with sweated breath inspired hath in every holt and eighth the tender croppes, and the youngest son hath in the ram his half course erones. So pricketh him notorious garages that longing folk to goon on pilgrimages. I can say
well
it
done,
to this
sir.
day.
Yep, it obviously made an impression on you.
It,
That's
it
excellent.
it did, and it's just like I audited God Almighty, I audited a French class, and the only thing I
Mhm.
can say in French is "La j'ai dit mon alphabet, dites-moi si ce n'est pas gay." And I found out one thing interesting. If because I must be the aberration because I graduated high school, got into college, graduated college, and
Mhm.
I never took a foreign language until I got to college.
No, that's the thing that is really, it's really, and this was one of the things that I noted while I was down there in Costa Rica. It is really an indictment of the American educational system. The American educational system really, truly does want to produce people that are only smart enough to pay their taxes and perform a function. They really don't want you to be educated. And that was one of the things that was so apparent, that pretty much everybody down there had been educated in English in some form or fashion. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, English was the language of commerce until here
Well,
recently.
down there, that's kind of weird. I would figure that in that area, the language of commerce would have been like Castilian Spanish, since it was conquistadors in Spain that pretty much. Uh,
Well, no, I'm talking about the worldwide.
okay. So you're talking
Whereas,
modern day.
well, in modern day, I think we're getting away from that, and soon it's going to be the language of commerce is going to be
Russian.
Mandarin Chinese.
But I'd rather deal with them Russians.
Oh, I'd rather
I
deal
still
with
don't.
Russians.
I would trust a Russian because Russian a lot further than I trust them little Chinese bastards.
Well, that is one of the interesting things that I read not too terribly long ago. They were talking about, the currency, the social currency in the United States is kindness, or considered to be kindness. The social currency in Russia is
no damn wonder we broke.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, but that's one of the things where it's like if you ask somebody, in Russia, do these pants make me look fat? They're going to tell you, no, it's not the pants, it's your fat ass. Okay, but
I must be Russian.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you and I are cut from similar cloth on that nature. But
but
anyway,
I sprechen Sie Deutsch, and that's all the German I got, baby. So that's it.
All right, so I won't go into anything in German then. But
back
to
but what my point is I tended to learn more, like Spanish. Mm-hmm. I tended to learn more being in situations because when I was in college, it was in a predominantly area where they speak a lot of Spanish in the United States. Mm-hmm. Well, I had to pick up on different sayings and phrases and stuff like that. And it was a lot easier to learn than out of a dad blame book.
Well, that's the thing. One of the things that I can comment is that I've studied French, I've studied German, and I've studied Spanish. Mm-hmm. And until I was actually down there and in the environment like you described, where the majority of what was being said was in Spanish, that Spanish was academic, but it was not useful. But
because usually the questions and stuff and the way you learn to say it has absolutely no practical application whatsoever.
Right, absolutely. Now, but again, the intriguing thing is as those brain cells started coming into effect, I could feel the different part of my brain being activated. And I mean, it was actually my girlfriend, who is Costa Rican, was really amazed at how quickly I started picking it up. Mm. But again, I could feel it in a different part of my head. And the way that was described was listening to the music and hearing the music that I did not hear before.
Gotcha.
Which I thought was a lovely way of putting it. But now that I'm back in the States, I'm very sad to say that part of my brain now seems to be going back to sleep.
Well, there ain't too much here to listen to because it all sucks.
Well, there you go.
But we promised we wasn't going to go into that on this episode.
Absolutely. So I'll go back to what we were talking about previously before we got derailed on coffee and Don Quixote. So,
love the book.
Oh yeah, we should talk about that at some other point. But
that's on this season. Let's make it to where at least one episode a month we pick a book and we just dissect the book and go over all the just all the nuances and stuff of the book.
Well, I think that's a good idea. I think we can do that. We'll have our own little book club thing, I guess, going. But back to the Costa Rican stones, which we've been derailed.
And we're not, and it's not referring to it's not a music group like the Rolling Stones.
No, it's not. But that would be an intriguing thing to do. Now, so there was a pre-Aztec, pre-Incan society that are referred to as the Olmecs.
Can I say one more thing before we go any further?
How can I stop you?
I learned something. I watched something. I can't remember where I picked it up at. I don't remember if it was here. It was some documentary.
Mhm.
that what we refer to the Aztecs is not how they referred to their own selves.
No,
It
yeah,
was the
that
Mexicas or something like that was what they were actually called themselves.
sure. And that's probably very accurate. I'm not going to argue with that because I'm sure that the Incas didn't call themselves the Inca, and I'm sure that I mean, again, typically most of the tribal names translate to the human beings, and everybody else is all the rest of y'all, or bastards, or
Right.
foreigners or barbarians. But so with you, we have as people, we tend to have a tendency to call us us and everybody else them. So, but at any rate, so these Olmecs were the society that worked with these large stones and
Uh-huh.
built like Pumapunku and well, now again, that's not in Costa Rica, that's a different area, but places
That's
like that
Peru,
where
isn't it?
those yeah, that's Peru. But these that it was I think it was a similar group of people. And again, some of these stones are extremely large. Now, the thing that happened is, of course, we had the colonialization period where the conquistadors went through and wiped out, and of course, gave syphilis and smallpox to the indigenous peoples and wiped out a lot of the indigenous population of South and Central America as well as North America.
Mm-hmm.
But then came after the colonialization period. Then you, of course, had the where they had the plantations built and all that stuff, and so a lot of this stuff that was that existed from these ancient civilizations, nobody cared because the big problem was as they were plowing the rows to plant their bananas or whatever or their palm trees,
Mm-hmm.
they were hitting these big rocks with their plow and it was damaging their plow and all that stuff. So nobody cared. So a lot
Right.
of these things were dug up, scattered.
And discarded, and they were
Right.
nuisances.
Right, exactly. And then somewhere along the way, somebody looked at it and went, well, now, wait a minute. This is not a naturally occurring phenomena. And the thing that and the gentleman that I went on the tour with was an architect, and he was talking to me about the architecture of their dwellings, which was based on a base 12 system similar to what you have in ancient Mesopotamia,
Okay.
things of that nature. So there's that thread as well
Do
that
we
ties
use the base
together.
12 system here?
No, we use a base 10.
Okay.
And, it's really interesting why. I mean, because we have 10 fingers and 10 toes. So why would we use a base 12 system? But, there's actually some reasoning behind that. But the thing that intrigued me about this now, if you watch some of these things, some of these other shows that talk about these out of place ancient artifacts and things of that nature, they refer to them as all being perfectly round. Now, there are some that are perfectly round.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a lot more of them, probably. Well, I don't know if a lot more, but a fair number that I saw that aren't perfect. But the thing that's so intrigued me about it is that if you look at the sculptures of the animals that they had and the sculptures of their kings and their leadership and even their gods, they're very stylized, and they're compared to these stones, they're almost slapdash. It's almost like, yeah, let's go ahead and get this knocked out so we can work on this rock,
Right.
this round rock. And so, of course, some of them are lined up, and for astronomical observation and stuff like that. And the architecture again of their dwellings and their cities was really surprisingly advanced and adapted to. I mean, a lot of these things were in a floodplain, and so they were raised up so that the floor didn't get wet when the rainy season hit and it flooded. I mean, and a lot of this stuff is it's kind of common sense sort of thing, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also elegant in the execution and shows just how brilliant the minds were that came up with these things. And so when you look at that, and then you look at these stones, and you realize that the amount of time and effort and whatnot that they took on these is really staggering, even compared to the statue they made of, King whoever.
Well, and you had sent me a couple of pictures via text message, and I had, it inspired me or sparked me to even look it up on the internet. And you're looking at, and I look at these, and that's like one of the questions I had. I'm like, well, I'm seeing these round stones. Why are you making? What purpose were they there to serve? Because you wouldn't think they would just be bored and say, "Hey, okay, we're going to make a bunch of damn stone balls to lay around."
And again, some of these are then some of them are made out of granite. Okay,
and that's not easy to make round.
Yeah, and in a 6-inch diameter, 6 foot diameter. I mean, they're big. Okay, some of them are small, but some of them are big. And one of the things that they appear to be arranged, a lot of them in constellations and whatnot. It's really difficult to say that that's accurate because, again, during the colonialization period, a lot of these things were stolen, moved. They just dug them up and got them out of the way
because they were even less important at that point to the colonizers.
Right, exactly. Now, one of them, and I think I sent you a picture of this, is really difficult to tell, but on one end, as you're coming through, on one end, and of course at this point I had also lost about 4 pints of blood to the local mosquito population because I neglected to bring any off. It had like a stone monolith, very similar to something like a tiny Stonehenge on one end. And then on the other end, it looked almost like it was a school teaching people how to make these rocks. I mean, some of them were gorgeous, beautifully rounded. And that was one of the comments that my guide that was with me made. Now he said, of course, he had he said he was almost joking when he said that, but he was talking about there was one of them that was very poorly rounded, and he's like, yeah, that one. They were having the conversation. Are you sure that you really want to be a sculptor? There's lots of other things.
That must have been the one I was working on.
But it did look as if they had a school teaching how to make those. But now, again, we can't be sure that those were all in situ or if they had been just gathered up or what. But it was very easy to conceptualize that this was a school where they were showing you how to make the boulders, how to align them using these posts with the stars and in the cluster. So it was very easy to imagine that that was the case.
Right.
Now, there's no written record. Okay.
Well, that would make too much sense.
Right. And so there's nothing that we can go through. And if there was one, it was probably destroyed long ago. But
we haven't yet discovered it yet.
That's entirely possible as well. But it was actually, it was beyond fascinating to me, especially the part with why they took so much time to make these rounded stones and so much less time to make the their totems and whatnot. They looked crude by comparison, to my eyes. So that was what was fascinating to me. So these stones were of a vast importance to them for one reason or another, in my rarely humble estimation. But I can tell you two things. One, it is well worth the time to take a trip to see this museum. The museum is lovely. They are and
from what I understand, they're just not at the museum. They're like, because I want to say if I remember correctly, when I was in the Capitol building, there were some of these stones that were actually displayed in front of their legislative assembly building.
Some of them are, some of them have been moved and recovered and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. A lot of them are reproductions.
Oh, okay.
And
Because I know, like, when I was there, I didn't take a tour or go to the museum, but I had, obviously with the company, there are locals that work there in Costa Rica. And one
Mhm.
of the things that one of the younger guys was telling me is that his parents had always told him, and what he had learned was that these were remnants from Atlantis and
Well,
stuff like
that's
that.
intriguing. Well, so and again, that is one of the things there. The amount of evidence that there was is it antediluvian? I guess is the correct word. Pre-flood, uh,
Pre-flood, right? Big pre-flood.
right? Culture that existed that was wiped out in the Great Flood.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many cultures that talk about the Great Flood that it absolutely had to have been a real thing.
Right.
Now, was it a worldwide conflagration? I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. Nobody took a videotape of it that I'm aware of. So, but there was something and it was advanced.
But if anybody
And
has one, send it to our email address and we'll look
yeah,
at it.
absolutely. And we'll comment on it as well. But yeah, so it's very much worth going. And I think that the museum itself it is an archaeological site. It is an archaeological dig.
Mm-hmm.
And it is absolutely, there's a portion of it that is outside and it is very well kept up. It is gorgeous. It is very well worth going to, extremely intriguing. And yeah, so I highly recommend it. Highly, highly, highly recommend it.
Well, and I think that's one of the things we need to look at doing too. Is one of the things is my travel now is, excuse me, a little bit limited due to baby dog, and where I can take said baby dog, because I would hate to have to create an international incident.
Oh, I understand.
And about them trying to tell me I couldn't have baby dog when, trust me, I'm gonna have baby dog if I have to sneak into the country illegally and be illegal. How are you on procuring your reentry benefits as an illegal alien new to our country?
Well, sadly, the Costa Ricans are far more strict about illegal alien stuff than the United States is. I know that's a huge shocker, and so I was unable to make that
I'm
attempt.
telling you, I know about the other countries because I can tell you, when I went to the UK, or many times when I went to the UK, they're going to ask you how long you're going to be there, when you're leaving. There, you got to prove you got enough money to be there. And some instances, depending on what part of the world you're from, I was there when they were telling a woman she was going to have to post the equivalent of like a $25,000 bond for her relatives to come in saying that they were going to leave when they were supposed to.
Oh yeah. Well, so, and that's one of the things my flight came in at a different time than my girlfriend. And so I was there before she was. And as I was going through customs, they get to the point where we're in customs and I didn't know where we were staying. She did. She had made the reservation.
She had done the reservations and everything.
And so I show up and he's like, well, where are you staying? And I said, I don't know. And he said, okay, well, who are you here with? And I gave him her first and last name. And he looks at me, he says, Costa Ricans have 4 names. And I said, that is the first time I have ever heard that. I don't know what to do. So he fortunately, he let me into the country after I showed him my return ticket. But I was not going to be allowed into the country because I was lacking 2 names and a destination.
Well, I still go back to the episode we had the last published episode, which I believe was on the 18th. Did you finally get used to having to swipe a credit card to turn the lights on in the hotel?
Well, yeah, that was a short-lived situation, but I did wind up. Someone had broken the shower in the room that I was in. So once I got the lights on, I wound up in my typical fashion of being Mister Fix-It. Wound up repairing
Did
the
you send them a
shower.
bill?
No, but they were very upset that I had done that instead of calling them to let them take care of it. It was like, well, I wanted to take a shower.
Yeah. Funny
I
that.
needed water to come out of the right parts.
Funny, yeah, funny that.
But it was, again, it was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful countryside. Some of the friendliest, kindest, and most genuinely open and loving people that I have ever met in my life. And
But, I find that, in travels, and I don't travel nowhere near as much as I used to.
Mhm.
And I'm not meaning this in a derogatory fashion, but if you get convicted by this, then that's your own fault, not mine.
Mhm.
I have tended to learn that people outside of the United States
Mhm.
are more open and compassionate than people inside, just in the next town or the
Oh yeah.
next town over, or the two towns over. And they tend to be more, they just tend to be more open and genuine people. We just
Well,
have raised a bunch of generations of bastards.
and that's because of their, they have common cultures. They have common cultural events, common things
Right.
that they
Well, and
do.
see, we don't
And
have that
that,
because
yes,
we do not
that has
have
been
American identity anymore.
right. That has been beaten out of us by primarily the Department of Education is the ones that have done the most damage in my research to the American experience, as it were.
Well, I'm
That's
going to be
actually
honest with you. I still don't consider myself an American. I'm a North Carolinian.
well, again, and that was and you and I have discussed this before. North Carolina and South Carolina, well, Georgia, all of the South was very different before the influx of Yankees came
Mm-hmm.
in here, and again, and that's the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be a North Carolinian. I'm
Right.
supposed to be a South Carolinian. But but together we make up the United States. But again,
Right.
it's
Because even though we had differences, that the differences were supposed to
Mhm.
be more of a localized.
Right.
Well, the differences were localized. The common effort
Mhm.
or the common good, which the federal government was supposed to do, was supposed to be for national defense and stuff like that. That
Absolutely.
each individual state was supposed to make up their own mind about what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. It didn't give a
Right.
damn how California did it, how South Carolina did it, or how anybody
Mhm.
else did it. When you were in the confines of this state, this is how it
Mhm.
was done.
Right.
And the
And
federal
again,
government didn't have any jurisdiction or any right to stick its nose in. And I will contend to my dying breath that it still does not have
no,
any
it
right
still
to
does
do so.
not. It absolutely does not. It is
And
absolutely
that's part of
not.
the redneck agenda, baby.
Yeah, man.
And I thought
Well,
we
I'm
weren't
right
going
there
to do
with you.
politics, and I'm the one doing it.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm willing to let you roll with it, big guy,
Well,
because I
I'm on
agree.
a coffee high, baby. You don't ever know what's going to happen.
Well, yeah, and that's so I'm right there with
I
you.
did see, I haven't done much with the news,
Mhm. Well, it's all
really.
bad.
Well, I don't watch it much anymore. I did see where that was it Argentina, the new president of Argentina. He
Is he
pretty
still
much,
alive?
yeah, he pretty much told the Russians and the Chinese to go F themselves. He wasn't doing a deal with neither one of them.
Well, good.
I
And that's
just thought,
about the way
well, I
it is.
just thought it was interesting that you had a politician to add some balls because God knows we ain't had one in a long time.
Well, that's the thing that's wonderful about him is his goal is to wipe out the permanent bureaucracy in Argentina,
Mm-hmm.
and we need some more of that in the United States because
Well,
that's
I'm gonna probably piss a lot of people off by saying this,
I'm
and
shocked and appalled.
well, and I really don't care. I mean, we may get less listeners and stuff like that, but you know what? I really don't give a shit. It don't make any difference to me.
Mm.
I really don't want Donald Trump to run
Well,
because honestly, my gut feeling is he
mhm.
brings it's too much chaos, and I don't think it is going to be conducive to moving what is best for America forward by having him in the White House. Not saying that he can't do it. I'm just saying that the chaos that comes around him.
But where does that chaos come from is my question.
Well,
that's the thing I would ask
part
you to
that
look
we're
at.
trying to figure out, because a lot of it he does himself because he don't know when to shut up.
There's some truth to that, but the vast majority of that chaos that comes is from permanent Washington who does not want to be removed.
Right.
Okay. Or even found out. I mean, again, you saw recently the information about how many of these senators and congressmen are compromised in sex rings and stuff like that, and
I
that's why they're.
thought that was all of them.
Well, pretty much, yeah.
I mean,
And that's
because
why
I thought that
that's,
was proven and shown back during the Franklin Savings and Loan scandal back in the late 80s, early 90s, when they had White House logs that these
absolutely.
male prostitutes, underage male prostitutes, were in the White House.
But again, it's been brushed over, and the media no longer reports on the truth and the facts. They report on the propaganda to prop up the existing permanent Washington. So again, they're all in this massive malaise of the word just went out of my head, corruption.
They just a bunch of bastards is what it boils down to.
Well, and that's the thing. So the point being that I would point out is the chaos that's associated with Trump, I think, is associated more with the permanent federal government, the permanent bureaucracy not wanting anybody to upset their apple cart.
Right.
Now, I don't care about Trump one way or another personally. I truly don't. Okay. I think that it is absolutely reprehensible that any of these states will prevent the public. I mean, this is something that everybody should be aware of. The fact that they're going through and removing him or attempting to remove him from the ballot based on the 14th Amendment.
I want to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question. You're a student of history.
Yes, sir.
When was the last time they tried to remove a political candidate from the ballot?
In the United States?
Mm-hmm.
I'm wanting to say it was Abraham Lincoln.
You are 100% correct.
Yeah.
And that was also part of the causation of the conflict between the states.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, again,
it brings me to another interesting point. You know, we talk about how the South seceded and they were traitors and all this stuff, but Abraham Lincoln says and believed that secession was legal.
Well, it is.
It is. And here's I find useless information everywhere. I'm a font of useless information. And this is a quote of what Abraham Lincoln said on the U.S. House floor of Representatives in 1848.
Mm-hmm.
Says, any people anywhere being inclined and having the power have the right to rise up and shake off the existing government and form a new one that suits them better. This is a most valuable, a most sacred right, a right which we hope and believe is to liberate the world. Nor is this right confined to cases in which the whole people of an existing government may choose to exercise it. Any portion of such people that may revolutionize and make their own of so much of the territory as they inhabit.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's very accurate and beautifully said, and is something that we need to consider even to this day. The point being that it should be plainly obvious to anyone that's paying any attention whatsoever that at least on a federal level, and I would even contend on a state and in some cases even a local level, that the government is no longer providing or working towards the benefit of the citizenry. It is,
and I would say it probably hasn't since Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society.
I'd say you're probably correct. I think there's plenty of finger pointing that can be done.
I mean, we know the famous quote that the reason people are voting Democrat, obviously,
Oh, absolutely.
that Lyndon
Yeah,
Johnson
absolutely.
said that came true,
Right.
and I'm not going to say it, but
No,
it
absolutely.
obviously proved to be 100% correct.
Well, and again, with every single iteration of the presidency, really since Eisenhower. Now, granted, Kennedy's presidency was never completed because he was assassinated because he was going to go
Sell
after
into the
military industrial.
CIA,
Yep, he was
into
going
a
after the
million people.
CIA. He was going after the CIA. He was going after the Federal Reserve, and he was going after the military-industrial complex.
Well, I mean,
And
the CIA lied to him, so they killed him.
yeah, absolutely. And so there, but every single president since that point, there has been, and even my favorite president of Ronald Reagan, there was a dark side, and the junk bond bubble and scandal that
Mm-hmm.
wiped out the federal savings and loans was part and parcel to the policies of the Reagan administration. Also, the Reagan administration are the ones that put this, and I can't remember the name of the bill, but it's the bill whereby pharmaceutical companies cannot be held liable for side effects of the vaccines. Now, the reason that was put in place was they were going to stop making the vaccines. And,
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly, smallpox, rubella, those vaccines need to be made because that's what
Well,
they
they
saved
flared
millions of
back
lives.
up here lately as well.
Correct, because people are so
You know,
turned
I
off
have
by
an
pharmaceutical
interesting
companies.
take on that not being able to be held responsible for the side effects. Because as you know, I'm going through a situation now.
Mhm.
We all will find ourselves in sooner or later as our parents age and stuff
Mhm.
like that. My mother is dealing with Alzheimer's now. My
Right.
grandfather had it. And,
Yeah.
this is not my first time dealing with it, obviously. So, the steps and the stuff. But one thing that we did not know and was not printed on the side of the, as a side effect, which has now been proven, is
Mhm.
my mother was a school teacher all her life. She
Uh-huh.
taught for almost 40 years. She
Mhm.
taught behaviorally and emotionally handicapped kids. Some
Uh-huh.
say she had a lot of practice on me. Um, that that's up for interpretation. Depends. Some days,
Mhm.
yes. Some days, no. It depends on if I've had my medication or not. But
Mhm.
anyway, like most people during the age, she got caught up to where, she was, some battling depression and stuff. And, it was at a time to when you really didn't talk about it. You just kind of went secretly to a doctor and did what you needed to do. Well, the
Mhm.
doctor had prescribed my mother a antidepressant called Paxil.
Okay.
Well, one of the known side effects that apparently, because I've never seen it on any of the drugs bottles that she had, or if when you read it,
Mhm.
is it's been known to cause Alzheimer's.
That's intriguing. I really,
Or that's what I have been told by her doctor. I have not seen that in writing myself, but that's what her Alzheimer's doctors have told us.
well, and one of the things that it seems very obvious to me is one of the things that is a contributing factor to dementia and Alzheimer's and all of these is blood flow.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these medications, especially the mRNA shot, is one that seems to adversely affect blood flow in many cases, and that's something that really needs. Well, again, the bottom line is that all of this stuff that is based purely on the almighty dollar and profits um, really needs to come back to and be held accountable for the damage that they're doing to the population. And again, this
Mm-hmm.
is something that overall, that's one of the things that we need as a citizen, the citizenry of the United States, we need to get together and stop tolerating this. That it's just not tolerable. It is only tolerable that our government entities provide for the citizenry that supports them, rather than just the citizenry being an inexhaustible bank account for these government entities.
Well, I mean, because it's more lucrative to treat something than it is to cure it.
Oh, absolutely.
You hear the old adage is they could have cured it 20 years ago, but they can't make any money because it's not going to get the senators and the Congress people elected by big PACs of big drug companies and big pharma to cure anything.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And that is the sad state of affairs that we're in.
Well, that brings me back, I harp on this a lot, and, I think about this a lot, particularly every month when my dog's health insurance comes out of my bank account.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at this and I can't, 90% of everything is covered for the dog. Okay. Medications, 100% of wellness. So like your physical, all that crap. And, I'm thinking back before Obamacare, and my insurance premium that I paid was not much more than what I pay for my dog now. And I got the same benefits. And yet now my cheapest insurance payment, and it doesn't cover anything until I spend $12,000, is $500 a month. And that is just absolutely stupid.
Oh no, I remember very clearly that my healthcare costs increased by 400% as soon as the Affordable Care Act went into place. Now, I had a relative who was not taking care of her own healthcare costs and was not insured and all of that stuff, and it was wonderful for her and from her perspective, because now I had to essentially pay for her health care. But yeah, I was a single father raising three kids by myself, and all of my kids, of course, were on my health plan, and my costs went up 400%, and I was not able to keep the same doctor that I had.
See, I wasn't able to keep mine either. And here's an interesting thing, because this it's happening to me now. Is I would pay cash to go see the doctor that I go see, because the copay under the insurance was only $6 cheaper than the cash price. And why am I going to spend $500 a month to save $12 a year? That's just absolutely stupid. So,
and the answer is that most people don't realize that their copay is only $5 or $6 less than what they would pay if they paid cash out of it.
So I call my doctor. Unfortunately, COVID, she had left a main practice and had gone out on her own. COVID kind of, it hurt all businesses, including healthcare professionals. And so she was unable to continue to stay out independently of her own. So she went in with another group of doctors in Greensboro, which is, the big city, one of the bigger cities near me. And so I call up to make an appointment. And first off, I'm not real happy, because before, when I called at her office, somebody would answer the phone. You talk to somebody. Now they answer the phone, you get transferred to 4 different people, and then you have to leave a voicemail. And they may or may not call you back. You don't know. So finally, the girl calls me back, and I happened to be at the office, and because I left my office number that day just for the off fact of my cell phone catching it as a spam call or something like that. And so I'm talking to this girl. Now, mind you, I have not seen this doctor, since she's in with this practice that she's with now. So I'm talking to her about getting an appointment, telling her, because I had missed the one in October because I was out of town, and I needed to reschedule. I needed to get an appointment, and I also had a few questions. And so I'm a little leery about going to see her at this practice, because the most important question they could not answer was, what is the cash price for a consultation? And they said, well, I don't know, but they'll give you 30% off if you pay cash. And I'm like, well, then tell me what the price is for a cash consultation, because otherwise I'm not coming.
Right. And I've had that conversation myself with some of my healthcare professionals that I have walked out of their office, because I've told them, look, I'm paying cash. You're going to tell me how much this is going to cost before I leave your office. I'm not doing this. I'll just bill you after the fact. You're going to tell me what it's going to cost me before I walk in, or I'm leaving your office now. They don't care for that. Because
they don't. But it's like, I work hard for the money that I have and I spend, and I don't have a problem spending it because I buy it. You know me well. I don't have a problem spending money on some of the dumbest shit out there.
I understand. Believe me. I'm right there with you.
But it's like, I want to know, and I don't understand why, because I have a roundabout idea to know what she makes. So why do you want me to pay? I'm just going to give the example of what I have rumored that it cost on the internet. The difference when before it was $76, and now I'm not 100% sure, but from what I've got to talk to other people that have gone there, the cash price is now $380 some at this new office. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm not paying $380 a visit to go to the dabbling doctor, but that's still cheaper than paying for insurance.
No, absolutely it is. Absolutely.
So, okay, we've come to the last ending bit of this episode. This is season 2, Carolina Underground, episode 1. We're starting a new genre. We don't know what we're going to do. So let's say this is for 2023. What are our goals for this show?
For 2023 or 2024?
Are we in 2020? Yeah, we'll be in 20. We're in 2024. See, I'm still writing it on checks too.
Well, there you go.
So 2024, what are our goals for this show?
To entertain people and maybe give them a reason to be a little bit closer together with their neighbors. How's that?
That's a pretty good goal. I always knew you were the kind, loving one out of the two of us.
Well, I appreciate that, my friend.
Mine was a little bit different.
All right.
For 2024, I'm going to tell you the unvarnished truth, good, bad, or ugly. And if you get pissed off, I don't care, because the truth is the truth and a fact is a fact. A boy has a penis and a girl has a vagina. There ain't no way to get around it. That's just the way it is. And that is the snout to the curly fucking tail and everything in between. And we gone.
Have a good evening.
You've been listening to the Carolina Underground. Our passion is to talk about technology, history, media, politics, and how it's all changed over the years and affects our daily life as Gen Xers. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on Twitter at Carolina UNDGRND. Hit the website at www.thecarolinaunderground.com. And if you've got questions or comments, send an email to info@thecarolinaunderground.com. Stay Gen X strong. See you next time on the Carolina Underground.